He never came back for Christmas, but every December, Rosa still left the porch light on. A small beacon for a son who'd stolen everything but her hope. On the 25th year, it wasn't Daniel who returned. It was a young woman with his eyes standing at her door, holding a brass key that gleamed like an old secret waiting to be told. Welcome to True Voice. If you're watching this, like and subscribe, and let me know where you're watching from. The woman's voice trembled as she spoke. My name's Sophia, she said softly. He told me, one day I'd have to find you. Rosa's chest tightened. For a heartbeat she thought she'd misheard. The wind stilled, the house seemed to exhale. Daniel, her Daniel, the son who had taken every coin she and her husband saved, vanished into silence, and left her to bury both her pride and her husband alone. And now this girl, this stranger, was standing in his shadow. Rosa's fingers brushed the key. It was old, brass worn thin at the edges, engraved with a number and a faint name of a bank that didn't even exist anymore. Sophia didn't say much else. She only placed the key on the table, beside the chipped mug of tea Rosa had poured but never touched. He wanted you to have this, she whispered. He said it would explain everything. That night Rosa couldn't sleep. The key burned on the counter under the kitchen light. The memories clawed their way back. The bakery, the laughter, the smell of yeast and sugar. The day Daniel disappeared with their savings. The way her husband's hands had trembled when he found the box empty. The stroke that took him 2 months later. The funeral she attended with no tears left to cry. And the years that followed. Long, dry, silent years where hope was a wound she kept reopening. In the grey dawn, she wrapped the key in a napkin and boarded the city bus. The ride was long, her reflection a ghost in the window. The bank still stood, older, renamed, but breathing the same cold air of the past. The clerk led her to a small vault, metal doors sighing as they opened. Box 312. Her hands shook as she turned the key. Inside, a sealed envelope, a photograph, and a watch that had once belonged to her husband. Beneath them a neat stack of bills, untouched, crisp, old currency. Rosa's breath caught. The letter had her name written in a familiar, uneven hand. For a long time she couldn't move. When she finally did, her fingers brushed the photo. Daniel, younger, smiling beside a woman and a little girl. Sophia. She took the box home but couldn't open the letter. Not yet. The past had teeth, and she wasn't ready to bleed again. That night, she placed the watch on her table and stared at it ticking softly, like a heartbeat that had outlived its body. Days passed. Rosa's resolve crumbled. The envelope lay beside her untouched breakfast until one morning, she broke the seal. Inside, Daniel's handwriting spilled across the page like a confession long delayed. Mama, I never meant to hurt you. I took the money because I was desperate. I owed the wrong people. If I hadn't left, they would have killed us all. I thought I could fix it and come back, but I couldn't. I lived with that shame every day. The money I sent, the help you never knew about, it was all me, Mama. Every roof repair, every hospital bill, every anonymous gift. I wasn't brave enough to face you, but I never stopped trying to make it right. The words blurred. Her son's voice seemed to echo through the paper. Weary, pleading, raw. If you're reading this, I'm gone. But maybe Sophia can give you what I couldn't, peace. Rosa pressed the letter to her chest, sobbing for all the years she'd spent angry at a ghost. She saw it now, the hidden mercy in the small miracles she'd taken for granted. The day her leaky roof was mysteriously fixed. The envelope of cash that appeared after her surgery. All those years she had cursed his name, never knowing he was there in the shadows, still her son, still atoning. When Sophia returned days later, Rosa didn't speak. She only opened the door wider and let her in. The girl looked uncertain, clutching a worn scarf. He said you loved tamales, she murmured, holding out a small bag. Rosa smiled faintly, the same kind of smile she hadn't worn in years. The kind that hurts before it heals. They sat together at the table where silence used to live. For the first time, Rosa looked at Sophia not as a reminder of loss, but as something left behind for her to love. Yet something inside her stirred uneasily. Daniel's letter had mentioned danger. People who wanted him dead. If he truly was gone, then who had slipped the last envelope under her door just last week, sealed, unmarked and containing only one thing, another key. The rain hadn't stopped. It whispered against the roof like 1,000 tiny apologies, slipping down the windowpane as Rosa led Sophia inside. The door creaked the way old bones do, complaining quietly about being disturbed after years of silence. The air smelled faintly of chamomile and dust, a house that had forgotten laughter but remembered grief. Rosa moved slowly, as if afraid that any sudden movement would make the girl vanish. Sit, she said, her voice soft but careful, like a word tested before use. She reached for the kettle that had outlived everything else. Her husband, her bakery, even her faith. Steam rose, fogging her glasses as she poured the tea. Sophia sat on the edge of the couch, hands folded tightly in her lap. Her eyes moved across the living room, over the faded lace curtains, the ticking clock, the quiet photographs that watched over the space like ghosts unwilling to rest. Every surface was neat, untouched, preserved the way grief likes it, tidy, predictable, unchanging. Rosa handed her the cup. The porcelain trembled slightly in her hands. "It's not much," she murmured. Sophia smiled politely. "It's perfect," she said, but the words felt too big for the air between them. The clock ticked louder. Somewhere in the distance, a floorboard sighed. For years, Rosa had imagined this moment. Not this exact one, but something like it. A stranger at the door. A message from the past. Key, a name, a reason. And now that it had arrived, she felt nothing but the heavy quiet of disbelief. She wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but her tongue stayed still. Sophia's gaze wandered to the mantel. There, framed in gold, was the photograph. A young man, laughing, sleeves rolled up, holding a mixing bowl in a flour-dusted kitchen. The sun caught the corner of his smile, the way it used to. "Is that him?" Sophia asked softly. Rosa froze. The word him felt like a blade sharpened by memory. She turned toward the photo, her eyes softening in ways she didn't expect. "Yes," she said finally. "That's Daniel." Sophia stood and walked closer. Her fingers hovered just above the glass. "He looks happy," she whispered. "He was." The answer came out before Rosa could stop it. Then, quieter, almost to herself. "For a while." The silence stretched again, long and heavy. Rosa sank into the armchair opposite Sophia, her bones folding into the fabric as though they'd done this ritual of sitting and waiting for decades. She watched the girl trace the frame's edges, careful, reverent, and felt something unfamiliar tighten in her chest. Not anger, not sorrow, something in between. Sophia turned. "I don't know much about him," she said hesitantly. "He didn't talk about before, only that he missed his mother." Rosa looked away, her eyes drifting to the window where rain streaked the glass. "Missed me," she repeated under her breath. "Funny. He never said that when he left." The bitterness surprised her, old venom surfacing after years of pretending it had drained out. She pressed her palms together and breathed in, the way she'd taught herself to when grief came calling. Sophia lowered herself back onto the couch. "He wasn't proud of what he did," she said quietly. "He used to stare at the door sometimes, like he expected someone to walk through it and forgive him." Rosa's breath faltered. A tear formed at the corner of her eye, small and defiant. She blinked it away before Sophia could see. "Forgive him," she repeated flatly. "That's not how forgiveness works, child. You don't wait for it like mail." Sophia didn't reply. She sipped her tea instead, though it had already gone cold. The silence between them grew roots. Rosa's eyes drifted again. The old armchair with its worn cushion, the corner where her husband's record player still sat, the hallway that led to a bedroom frozen in time. Every inch of this house was a map of things lost. She'd kept it all the same, as if still expecting someone to come back and recognize it. Even the clock, she wound it every Sunday. She said it was out of habit, but truthfully, it was to keep time from forgetting her. "You live here alone?" Sophia's question pulled her back. "Yes, always have." The lie hung in the air, too thin to stand on its own. Sophia nodded. "It's beautiful," she said gently, though her tone carried pity. Rosa caught it, the soft sorrow people used when they looked at old things. "It's a house," she said simply. "Beautiful doesn't live here anymore." Sophia looked down, ashamed, and Rosa immediately regretted it. The girl was innocent. The wound wasn't hers to carry. She sighed softer now. "I didn't mean it like that." "It's okay," Sophia murmured. "I understand." But Rosa knew she didn't. How could she? To understand would mean knowing what it was like to bury your husband under the weight of your son's mistakes. To sit alone through decades, speaking only to photographs. To wake up every morning and check if bitterness had finally killed your heart, and finding, disappointingly, that it hadn't. Outside, thunder rolled, a low, distant growl. Rosa stared at the key on the table again, its metal glinting in the lamplight. The sight of it stirred both hope and dread. She reached out, fingers brushing its edge. "Did he tell you what it opens?" she asked. Sophia shook her head. "Only that it was meant for you. And that when you used it, you'd finally understand why he left." Rosa's hand stilled. Understand why he left. The words echoed in her mind, scraping against 25 years of disbelief. Could there really be a reason? A truth that might make sense of the ruin he left behind. Sophia rose, setting her empty cup aside. "I should go," she said softly. "It's getting late." Rosa followed her to the door. The rain had eased into a mist. Sophia turned, uncertain. "I'll come back tomorrow if that's all right." Rosa hesitated. Then she nodded once. "Tomorrow's fine." The girl smiled faintly, a flash of Daniel in her expression. Then she was gone, a blur of umbrella and light footsteps disappearing into the night. Rosa closed the door, leaning against it for balance. The house seemed even quieter now, the kind of silence that hums in the bones. She walked back to the table, staring again at the key. Beside it, the photograph of her son smiled from behind glass, frozen forever in youth and laughter. Her lips trembled. "What did you do, Daniel?" she whispered. "What secret did you bury that even death couldn't hide?" The clock ticked once. The house seemed to hold its breath. And from somewhere deep within the walls, a sound. A faint metallic click, as though another lock had just turned itself open. The next morning arrived slow and uncertain, the sky hanging grey above the small town like a memory reluctant to fade. Rosa woke before dawn the way she always did. Her joints ached, her heart heavier than her bones. But this morning, something was different. The key on the table still glimmered faintly in the dim light, as if it had absorbed a dream while she slept. She brewed her tea in silence. The sound of the kettle was a heartbeat in an empty house. As she sat by the table, her eyes stayed fixed on the key. Brass, old-fashioned, its bow carved with a small symbol she hadn't noticed before. A crescent over a wave. She ran her thumb over it, wondering why it looked so familiar. Daniel had loved symbols. He used to draw them in his notebooks as a boy. Little shapes, he said, meant secrets only the sky knows. Rosa had laughed back then, brushing flour off his hair while he pretended to be a magician. Secrets only the sky knows. Now those words haunted her. She finished her tea, put on her sweater, and walked down the hall toward the back of the house, toward the room that had remained locked for 25 years. The door was simple, painted pale blue once but faded to gray. She hadn't stepped inside since the week Daniel vanished. After the police came and went, after the bank confirmed the emptied account, Rosa had turned the key, sealed the door, and tried to seal her heart with it. But the lock, it wasn't ordinary. It wasn't the same as when she'd locked it herself. Someone had changed it. Her hand trembled as she slid Daniel's key into the slot. Fit perfectly. Soft click. The kind that wakes something sleeping. Rosa pushed the door open. The air inside was cold, untouched. Dust particles shimmered in the beam of light breaking through the curtain. The room looked smaller than she remembered. The desk by the window, the corkboard cluttered with pinned letters, the radio still on the shelf, frozen mid-song. It was Daniel's old room. Exactly as he'd left it. Her chest constricted. She stepped forward, her fingers grazing the surface of his desk. A notebook lay open, filled with sketches and numbers, strange sequences and maps that looked more like codes than drawings. Rosa frowned. Daniel had always been clever. Too clever sometimes. But this was different. She turned the pages slowly. One of them stopped her cold. A list written in Daniel's tight, slanted hand. Names of those who lost everything. Records. Find them before they find me. Her heartbeat stuttered. On the next page, a newspaper clipping was taped in. The headline was barely legible. Local investment group collapses. Millions missing. She remembered that story. The same month Daniel disappeared. Rosa sank into his old chair. "What did you get yourself into, my boy?" she whispered. A sound startled her. The floor creaked behind her. She turned sharply, half expecting to see Sophia again. But the hallway was empty. Still she could feel something, a presence. The house breathing differently now, alive in ways it hadn't been for decades. She glanced back at the corkboard. Pinned near the bottom was a faded envelope addressed in Daniel's handwriting. "For Mother, only if I'm gone." Her hands shook as she pulled it free. The paper inside was yellowed, brittle around the edges. "Mama, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't come back. I never meant to take from you. Not the money, not the years. But I found something. Something I wasn't supposed to see. The key I left will open what they couldn't find, the truth. Don't trust anyone who asks about me. Not even the ones who say they're family. The lock in this house isn't the only one I left behind. Love, Daniel." Rosa reread it 3 times, her mind spinning. Not even the ones who say they're family. Sophia. The room suddenly felt colder. She sat frozen, the letter trembling in her hands, until the sound of tires crunching on gravel pulled her back. Through the window she saw the faint outline of a car, black, unfamiliar, parked near her gate. 2 figures stepped out. One was Sophia. The other, a man Rosa didn't recognize. Her stomach twisted. Daniel's warning echoed in her head. She slipped the letter into her pocket and stood by the door as they approached. When the knock came, she didn't answer right away. The silence between each knock grew heavier, almost expectant. Finally, Rosa opened the door just enough to see them clearly. Sophia smiled faintly, rain glistening in her hair. "Good morning, Mrs. Alvarez," she said. "This is my uncle, Daniel's brother-in-law. He wanted to meet you." The man stepped forward, his smile practiced. "We were hoping to talk about something Daniel left behind," he said. Rosa's eyes flicked between them. "And what would that be?" The man's gaze dropped to the key still dangling around her neck. "That," he said softly. Rosa tightened her hand around it. "This key." He nodded once. "It doesn't just open doors, Mrs. Alvarez. It opens accounts." Her breath caught. Sophia looked startled. "Accounts?" she echoed. The man turned to her. "You didn't tell her." Sophia shook her head, confused. "Tell her what?" He smiled again, but this time there was something cold behind it. "Your father didn't just vanish. He moved the money. Every cent. And from what I know, that key unlocks where it's been waiting all this time." Rosa's fingers clenched tighter around the chain. "You should leave," she said quietly. "Mrs. Alvarez," the man began. "I think you misunderstand. I said leave." Her voice carried a strength that startled even her. The man hesitated, reading her expression, a wall of quiet fury. Then he forced a smile and tipped his head. "We'll be in touch," he said before walking back toward the car. Sophia lingered on the porch, torn. "I didn't know he was coming," she said softly. Rosa studied her face. There was something genuine in her confusion, something Daniel might have left in her eyes. But trust was a fragile thing, and hers had been buried with the past. "Go home, child," Rosa said gently. "Some doors aren't ready to be opened yet." Sophia nodded slowly. "Then promise me you'll be careful," she said. Rosa gave no promise, only silence. When the car disappeared down the road, she locked the door again. This time she didn't breathe easily. She returned to Daniel's room and sat by the window, clutching the letter and the key. Outside, the rain had stopped, but thunder lingered in the distance. There were more locks, more secrets, and the truth, the real truth, was still waiting. Hidden somewhere Daniel never wanted anyone else to find. That night, Rosa couldn't sleep. The rain had eased into a whisper, but her heart hadn't. Daniel's words replayed in her mind like a prayer she didn't understand. "Don't trust anyone who says they're family." Sophia's uncertain eyes haunted her, the mix of innocence and something hidden behind them. The stranger's words, too, echoed in the dark. "It opens accounts." Rosa rose from bed and sat at her kitchen table, the key between her palms. It felt heavier now, as if it knew something she didn't. The moonlight stretched across the room, catching on a faint glimmer near the edge of the key's bow, a thin seam she hadn't seen before. Her breath caught. It wasn't a single piece. She pressed her fingernail along the line until it gave a soft click. The key's head split open like a locket. Inside, a second, smaller key lay hidden. Silver, unmarked, almost delicate. For a moment Rosa just stared. The air in the house felt charged, alive. 2 keys, 2 doors, 2 truth. She placed them both on the table. The brass one, the vault key, had already led her to one truth. Daniel's secret letter. But this silver one, where did it belong? Her eyes drifted to Daniel's old room again. The map, the coded drawings. She hurried down the hall and flicked on the light. The notebook still lay open on his desk, its pages a maze of symbols. But now she saw it, a small pattern repeating on the corners of the maps. A crescent over a wave. The same mark engraved on the brass key. Next to it a sequence of numbers. 57, 19, E. Coordinates. Rosa frowned. She'd seen similar numbers on old documents her husband once used for deliveries. Coordinates or street codes. She wasn't sure. But her instincts whispered that Daniel had left her a trail, one he knew only she could follow. She slipped both keys into her pocket, pulled on her cardigan, and grabbed her late husband's coat from the hanger. The weight of it grounded her. Outside the world was quiet. The streets glistened from the rain, and her footsteps sounded too loud against the silence. Rosa caught the first morning bus into the city. Her fingers wrapped tight around the keys like they might vanish if she let go. The bus hummed through sleeping neighborhoods, past old bakeries and shuttered shops. Rosa's mind drifted through memories. Daniel helping his father knead dough. His laughter echoing through the kitchen. The boy who used to dream of becoming an engineer, then a pilot, then everything at once. How had that boy turned into a man who disappeared? She pressed her forehead to the window, eyes glistening. The coordinates led her to the edge of the old industrial district, a forgotten stretch of warehouses and faded signs. The air smelled of dust and rain-soaked metal. She stopped in front of one building, its rusted gate half open. A faded plaque read, "Crescent Storage, 1972. Her pulse quickened. The same crescent symbol. Inside, the air was thick with neglect. Rows of metal doors lined the hall, some sealed with new locks, others broken and hanging open. She followed the numbering down until she reached Unit 57. The lock was old-fashioned, not a padlock but a small silver slot. Rosa took a shaky breath and slid the second key in. Turned smoothly. The door opened with a low groan. Dust swirled in the beam of her flashlight. Inside was a small office-like space. A desk, an old typewriter, a filing cabinet. But what caught her attention was a crate sitting in the corner, covered with a tarp. She pulled the tarp aside. Inside were stacks of folders, ledgers, and envelopes, each marked with years and names. And there, right on top, her own name, Rosa Alvarez. Her hand trembled as she lifted the envelope. Inside was a thick wad of documents, bank transfers, payment records, receipts. Every mysterious envelope she'd ever received over the years was accounted for here, all tied to one sender, D. Alvarez Trust. Tears welled in her eyes. Daniel hadn't just repaid what he stole. He'd multiplied it. But then she saw another file, marked with a red seal. Project Mara. The handwriting wasn't Daniel's. It was sharper, colder. She opened it cautiously. Inside were lists of names, signatures, and a ledger of transactions between people she didn't recognize. Her eyes skimmed the numbers. Huge sums, coded transfers, offshore accounts. One of the signatures stopped her cold. The man who came with Sophia. Rosa's heart thudded. Her mind reeled. Daniel hadn't run because of guilt. He'd run because of them. Whoever they were, they'd stolen more than he ever did. Footsteps echoed outside. Rosa froze. Someone was in the hall. The sound drew closer, slow, deliberate. She switched off her flashlight and pressed herself behind the desk. The footsteps stopped outside her unit. Then came the faint creak of the door. Mrs. Alvarez. Sophia's voice. Rosa's breath hitched. Are you here? Sophia whispered. I saw the door open. Please. If you're inside, we need to talk. Rosa hesitated, peering through a crack. Sophia stood alone in the dim light, hair damp from rain, eyes wide with worry. No one else seemed to be there. Rosa stepped out slowly. How did you find me? Sophia swallowed hard. That man, the one from yesterday. He's not who he says he is. I overheard him on the phone. He said something about finishing what they started 25 years ago. I came to warn you. Rosa's blood ran cold. Finishing what? Sophia looked at her with trembling lips. He said the key wasn't supposed to reach you. The silence stretched heavy between them. Then came another sound, this time from the far end of the corridor. A step, heavier, closer. Sophia's eyes widened. We have to go. Now. Rosa clutched both keys, the files, and Daniel's letter. Together they ran down the corridor, their footsteps echoing in the dark. Behind them a man's voice called out, calm and chilling. Mrs. Alvarez. You shouldn't have opened that door. They burst out into the rain-soaked street, lungs burning, hearts pounding. Rosa didn't know where they were running, only that Daniel's warning had come too late. In her coat pocket, both keys clinked softly, brass and silver, whispering secrets that refused to stay buried. Rain chased them down narrow streets, fierce and relentless, soaking their coats until they clung to their skin. Rosa's lungs burned, her breath ragged as she and Sophia turned the corner into the old district. The thunder rolled like anger from the heavens. The night, once silent, now pulsed with danger. Here! Sophia shouted over the storm, pointing toward the faint golden glow of a church's stained glass. Rosa followed, boots splashing through puddles. They pushed open the heavy wooden door. The hinges cried out as if in warning. Inside it was dim and hollow, the scent of old incense and wax still lingering. Rows of empty pews stretched beneath flickering candles. A single light glowed near the altar. A priest had fallen asleep with an open Bible on his lap. Rosa pressed a hand to her chest, gasping for breath. Sophia closed the door behind them, locking it. He's still out there, she whispered, her eyes darting toward the windows. I saw headlights. Rosa's voice was calm, too calm for the fear running beneath it. Sit. We need to think. They slipped into the shadowed corner near the side chapel, beside a statue of the Virgin Mary. Rosa laid the folder, Project Mara, on her lap. The papers were damp, ink beginning to bleed, but the signatures still visible. Who is he? Rosa asked finally. That man. Your uncle. Sophia shook her head. He's not my uncle. My father never mentioned him. He worked with my mother for some company, I think. After my father died, he showed up. Said he was helping me find my family. He said you were part of what Daniel left behind. Rosa looked down at the trembling hands clutching her coat. He used you, she said softly. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Rosa reached out, resting a hand over hers. I believe you. The words came easily, surprising her. Maybe because in Sophia's eyes she saw Daniel again. The same flicker of guilt, of yearning to do right after doing wrong. Thunder rumbled again. The priest stirred, mumbled something, and drifted back into sleep. Rosa unfolded the last page of Daniel's letter, the part she hadn't shown Sophia yet. The ink had faded, but the words still pulsed with his voice. If you find the storage, you'll also find the names. Don't let them destroy what's left. Mama, if you meet Sophia, tell her I'm sorry for the world she inherited. I tried to fix it. I couldn't. Her throat tightened. He knew, Rosa whispered. He knew they would come after him. He must have left something else behind. Something that explains why he risked everything. Sophia wiped her face. There's one more thing, she said. When I found the first key, it was hidden in a watch box, with a note that said, you'll need her to open the rest. Rosa looked at her sharply. Me. Sophia nodded. The handwriting was his. Rosa frowned. The rest of what? Before Sophia could answer, lightning flashed through the stained glass, painting the room in shards of crimson and gold. For a second, Rosa saw movement, a silhouette outside the window. Stay here, Rosa whispered. She stood slowly, moving toward the side door. The wind howled as she cracked it open. Nothing but rain and shadows. But on the church steps, caught in the pooling water, lay an envelope. She hesitated, then picked it up. Her name was written on the front, in Daniel's handwriting. Her pulse raced as she brought it inside. Sophia's eyes widened. That's impossible. Rosa tore the envelope open with trembling fingers. Inside was a single page. Soaked but legible. Mama, if you've made it this far, you've found the first layer. But there's another. The silver key opens a second vault. Not in the bank, not in the city. Look to where the waves meet the moon. It's where you took me on my 8th birthday. Rosa froze. Her breath caught in her chest. Where the waves meet the moon, she murmured. The lighthouse. Sophia frowned. What lighthouse? In Crescent Bay, Rosa said softly, the memory rising like light through fog. We went there every summer. Daniel used to say the sea kept secrets better than people. The two women stared at each other. The meaning was clear. Daniel had left one last hiding place. But the message had come too late. The sound of footsteps echoed again, this time inside the church. The priest startled awake, blinking at the figures moving through the main doors. Rosa grabbed the files and shoved them into her bag. Downstairs, she hissed. They slipped through the narrow door behind the altar, descending the creaking steps into the basement. The air grew colder, the scent of earth and mildew stronger. Only a single bulb flickered above, casting their shadows long and distorted across the stone walls. Who could have left that letter there? Sophia whispered. Rosa shook her head. Either someone who wants to help us, or someone who wants us to run exactly where they expect. Sophia shivered. What do we do? Rosa looked at her, really looked. The exhaustion in her young face, the fear, the small spark of courage that refused to die. Daniel had left her this girl, this living piece of redemption. We go to Crescent Bay, Rosa said quietly. But not tonight. We rest, we plan, and we move before they find us. Sophia nodded, but her gaze lingered on the bag. Do you really think my father's still out there? Rosa wanted to lie. Say no. To close the door on hope before it could hurt again. But she couldn't. I don't know, she said finally. But if he is this, she touched the letter, is the path he left us to find him. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the tiny basement window. And for just a second, Rosa saw it. A shadow, standing motionless beneath the rain, watching. She froze. Sophia, she whispered. Don't move. Sophia turned slowly, eyes wide. What is it? Rosa swallowed hard. We're not alone. The bulb above them flickered, once, twice, then went out. The basement fell into darkness. The sea was restless that morning, its waves curling and breaking against the rocks like old memories trying to return. The storm had passed, but the wind still howled through the coastal pines as Rosa's car wound down the narrow road toward Crescent Bay. Beside her, Sophia sat wrapped in a blanket, staring through the fogged window. The drive had been long, the silence between them longer. Neither had slept. The world felt thinner now, as though every sound, every shadow carried a warning. When they crested the final hill, the lighthouse came into view. It stood at the far edge of the cliff, pale and weathered, its light long extinguished. Below, the waves crashed against the jagged rocks, sending bursts of white spray into the gray air. Rosa pulled over, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. She remembered bringing Daniel here decades ago, a boy of 8, full of wonder, laughing as he chased the tide pools. He'd collected shells and called them sea keys, saying every one of them unlocked a story the ocean was keeping safe. Now, as Rosa stepped out, she realized he had meant it literally. The path to the lighthouse was overgrown, the metal gate rusted shut. She pushed it open with a groan. Sophia followed close behind, her eyes scanning the horizon. It feels like the world's holding its breath, she said softly. Rosa nodded. It usually does before something changes. The lighthouse door hung slightly ajar. Inside, the air smelled of salt and dust. Wooden steps spiraled upward into shadow. Rosa's flashlight cut through the dark, revealing old tools, ropes, and faded maps scattered across a table. But it was what lay in the center that caught her eye. A small wooden chest, locked with a familiar brass clasp. The mark of the crescent over a wave. Her pulse quickened. She reached into her pocket and drew out Daniel's brass key. It slid in easily and turned with a click. Inside the chest was a tin box wrapped in oilcloth, and beneath it, another letter. The edges were weathered, but the handwriting unmistakable. Mama, if you're here, it means Sophia found you. It means I failed to protect her the way I promised. What's inside this box isn't money. It's the truth. I was part of something and I thought I could fix it. I thought I could make them stop. Instead, I became their scapegoat. Project Mara wasn't about investments. It was about people. Families who lost everything to a system built on greed. I took the evidence. I hid it here. If they find it, they'll bury the truth again. But if you have it, maybe someone will finally listen. Rosa's vision blurred with tears. She pressed a trembling hand over the words. Sophia knelt beside her, lifting the tin box carefully. Should we open it? Rosa hesitated, then nodded. Together, they peeled back the damp cloth and opened the lid. Inside were rolls of microfilm, a small USB drive sealed in plastic, and several passports. One with Daniel's name, another with Sophia's when she was a child. Sophia's breath caught. He planned to take us away, she whispered. He wanted to keep us safe. Rosa exhaled shakily. And he never made it. They both turned at the sound of footsteps on gravel outside. Sophia's face drained of color. He found us. Rosa quickly closed the box and clutched it to her chest. Hide it, she whispered. They ducked behind the staircase just as the door creaked open. A beam of light cut through the dusty air. A flashlight. Mrs. Alvarez, came the man's smooth voice, echoing off the walls. I told you you shouldn't have opened that door. Sophia flinched. Rosa's grip on the box tightened. The man's footsteps drew closer, unhurried. I admire your persistence, he continued. Your son was clever. Too clever. But he forgot the first rule. No one runs from us forever. Rosa's heart pounded. The man stopped near the table, brushing his fingers over the open chest. Ah, you found it. He turned slowly, the flashlight slicing through the dark, landing directly on Rosa. There you are. Sophia stepped in front of her instinctively. Leave her alone, she said, voice shaking. The man smiled faintly. You're brave like your father. He said the same thing when he handed me the evidence. Sophia blinked. That's not true. He hid it from you. Oh, he hid something, the man said. But he also made a deal. One that kept you alive. Rosa's chest tightened. What deal? He looked at her calmly. He gave me the original files to protect his daughter. But he kept one copy, the one in your hands. The people I work for want that copy destroyed. You can either give it to me willingly or... He stepped closer. Rosa's hand brushed against the cold railing of the stairs. Her mind raced. The second key, Daniel's clues, the words, look where the waves meet the moon. She turned, and her eyes fell on the narrow crack in the wall near the window, faint moonlight gleaming through it. The moon, she whispered. What? Sophia asked. Help me, Rosa said. Together they pushed the loose board aside, revealing a hollow space behind it, just big enough to hide the box. The man frowned, noticing the movement. What are you doing? Rosa turned defiant now. You want this, she said, holding the empty oilcloth in her hands. Come take it. He lunged forward, but Rosa threw the cloth into his face, and Sophia swung the flashlight hard. Connected with a sharp crack. The man stumbled back, cursing, clutching his temple. Run! Rosa shouted. They bolted through the door and into the storm of sea wind. The waves roared below, the sky breaking open with rain again. They raced down the cliff path, their shoes slipping on the wet stones. Behind them, the man's voice shouted through the chaos. You can't hide it forever. At the bottom of the path, Rosa turned back. The lighthouse stood tall against the storm, its light long gone but its presence unbroken, a silent guardian over all that was lost and found. Sophia caught her arm. What now? Rosa looked at the horizon, her face wet with rain and tears. Now, she said softly, we finish what Daniel started. They disappeared into the mist, leaving the lighthouse behind. And inside its hidden wall, the tin box waited, humming with the weight of truth, its secrets not yet safe, but not lost. The motel smelled faintly of salt and coffee, that kind of cheap comfort only found in forgotten seaside towns. Rain tapped against the window like restless fingers, steady but impatient. Rosa sat at the small wooden desk, the tin box open before her, its contents spread out like a map of ghosts. Sophia sat on the bed, her knees pulled close, laptop balanced precariously. Her face was lit by the screen's pale glow. These files, they're encrypted, she said softly. But not random. There's a pattern. Coordinates, timestamps, transaction codes. Someone tried to erase this from every record. Rosa rubbed her temples, exhaustion written across her features. He must have known they'd come for him, she murmured. That's why he left it with me. Not to hide it, to finish it. Sophia turned the USB drive over in her hand. And he left just enough for us to trace him. Look here. She enlarged one file. Meritech Holdings, Crescent Project accounts. Lines of data scrolled past, revealing offshore payments, government contracts, and dozens of names. Among them one stood out, Leon Vargas. Rosa froze. That's the man from the lighthouse. Sophia's eyes darkened. He wasn't just after the evidence. He was part of it. Rosa reached for one of the old passports, Daniel's, and ran her thumb over the photo. His eyes stared back at her, calm even then, as though he knew she'd be sitting here one day, tracing the shape of his choices. He tried to fight them, she whispered. And they buried him for it. Sophia's voice softened. You said he used to bring you here. Rosa nodded slowly. Before he disappeared. He said this place made him feel invisible, safe. Maybe he used the motel once. Sophia looked around, her mind spinning. If he did, maybe he left something here too. She got up and began checking the drawers, the vents behind the headboard. Rosa almost laughed. The absurdity of two women searching for a dead man's secrets like treasure hunters. But then she remembered Daniel's letter. Look where the waves meet the moon. Hadn't just meant the lighthouse. Sophia pried open the vent beneath the window, and there, wrapped in an old handkerchief, was another folded note. Rosa's breath caught. She unfolded it carefully. If you've made it this far, you're close. But trust no one, not even those who claim they want justice. The truth has shadows too. Look for what's missing, not what's shown. Sophia exhaled shakily. What's missing? She murmured, then turned back to the screen. She scrolled through Daniel's files again and frowned. Wait, there are names here, but one column is blank. No transaction IDs, no signatures. She highlighted it. It's like he redacted one name himself. Rosa leaned closer. Whose? Sophia ran a code trace, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The encrypted data began to reveal fragments of metadata, timestamps aligning with dates from 25 years ago, the months before Daniel vanished. When the screen finally stabilized, one name appeared. Alvarez. Rosa's stomach dropped. That's me. Sophia stared at her, confusion and disbelief colliding. You. Why would your name be on these accounts? Rosa shook her head. I don't know. Never. I never had anything to do with this. Sophia's voice trembled. Then how? Before either could finish, the motel lights flickered, then went out. The room fell into darkness, broken only by the faint glow of the laptop screen. Rain roared harder against the windows. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed. Rosa grabbed Sophia's hand. Turn it off. Sophia shut the laptop, plunging them into complete blackness. Their hearts thudded in the silence. Then footsteps in the corridor. Low. Deliberate. Rosa's mind raced. She grabbed the tin box and shoved it beneath the mattress. The doorknob rattled once, twice, then stopped. And then a low voice through the door. Mrs. Alvarez, we need to talk. It was Vargas. Sophia's grip tightened on Rosa's arm. Rosa whispered, don't move. Vargas's tone was calm, almost courteous. You've done well getting this far. But you don't understand what you're holding. Daniel wasn't innocent. He made a deal with us, and with you. Rosa's voice was barely a breath. He's lying. Vargas continued. You think he disappeared because we took him? He chose to disappear. To protect himself. To protect you. Look at the records. His final transfer went to your name. Sophia shook her head. That's impossible. But Rosa's face had gone pale. The last image she remembered of Daniel, the night he left, flooded back. He'd kissed her forehead and said, if they ever come for you, say nothing. Trust what's written, not what you remember. The truth pressed against her chest like a stone. He used my name, she whispered. Sophia's eyes widened. To hide the money. Rosa nodded weakly. Or the evidence. Outside, Vargas exhaled. You have something of mine. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be. Rosa forced herself to stand. What you want doesn't belong to you, she said quietly. No response. Only the soft creak of floorboards. Footsteps retreating. Car engine started. Then silence. Sophia turned on the flashlight. The hallway beyond the cracked door was empty. Rosa exhaled slowly, her hands trembling. He's not done. He'll come back. Sophia sat down, shaken. What do we do now? Rosa looked toward the rain-slicked window, the horizon barely visible through the storm. We find out the truth before he does. Daniel didn't just hide evidence. He left a trail for us. And I think the next piece is where it all began. Sophia frowned. You mean home? Rosa nodded, her eyes distant. The house I locked for 25 years. The one he left the first key for. The rain began to ease. The power flickered back to life, bathing the room in weak light. The tin box glinted faintly under the mattress. A promise, a threat, and a doorway to the past. Rosa reached down and pulled it out, setting it gently on the table again. No more running, she said softly. It's time to open every door he left closed. Outside, a lone figure watched from across the street. His silhouette framed by the street lamp's dim glow. Vargas lit a cigarette, the ember flaring briefly, then dying in the wind. He smiled faintly, murmuring to himself, let's see how far the truth will take you. The rain swallowed his voice. The road back home felt longer than Rosa remembered. The sky was pale and cold, washed of all color, and the trees lining the narrow path bowed low as though they, too, remembered what had happened there. Sophia sat in the passenger seat, her eyes scanning the horizon. She hadn't spoken much since the motel. Only small, practical questions, directions, timing. Silence had settled between them again, but this time it wasn't the silence of strangers. It was the silence of two souls bracing for what they already feared to find. When the car pulled into the overgrown driveway, Rosa stopped breathing. The house stood like a relic from another lifetime. Its paint faded, the windows clouded by dust. The garden Daniel once tended was choked by wild grass, the roses long gone to thorns. A faint wind rattled the porch swing, its creak echoing through the still air like an old memory refusing to die. Sophia whispered, it's like time never moved here. Rosa opened the car door slowly, her shoes crunching against the gravel. Oh, it moved, she said softly. Just without us. They stepped onto the porch. The key, Daniel's first key, glinted in Rosa's hand. She slid it into the lock, half expecting it to resist. Didn't. The door opened with a long, tired sigh. The scent hit her first. Old wood, dust, and faint traces of Daniel's cologne, that familiar blend of cedar and salt. She closed her eyes just for a second, and she could almost hear him humming under his breath, could almost see his silhouette moving across the kitchen, the sound of a young boy laughing echoing faintly upstairs. But when she opened her eyes, the house was silent. Sophia wandered to the living room, running her hand across a framed photograph, the last family picture they took before Daniel vanished. Rosa stood in the doorway, watching as her daughter traced her father's smile with trembling fingers. "Mom," Sophia whispered, "why did you never come back here?" Rosa swallowed hard. "Because every time I tried, I could still hear him walking down that hall." They moved through the rooms together. The dining room with its empty chairs, the study lined with books Daniel once devoured, the hallway where Rosa had waited for him to come home that final night. Every step felt like walking through a memory that hadn't forgiven her for surviving it. Then they reached the door at the end of the hall, the basement door. It was different, reinforced with a steel lock, newer than everything else in the house. Sophia frowned. "Did you do this?" Rosa shook her head. "No." Sophia crouched down, studying the mechanism. "It's coded," she murmured. "But it's old, mechanical, not digital." She glanced at the brass key in Rosa's hand. "Try it." Rosa did. The key didn't fit. Her eyes darted to the second key Daniel had left inside the lighthouse box. The one she hadn't yet used. She slid it into the lock. It turned with a heavy click. The air that escaped from behind the door was cold and stale. Rosa flicked on her flashlight and stepped down the narrow staircase. Dust motes floated in the beam like drifting stars. At the bottom, the basement opened into a small workspace. Old papers were pinned across the walls. Maps, blueprints, photographs of buildings and faces. A single worktable sat in the middle, covered in layers of dust and forgotten tools. Sophia whispered, "He worked down here." Rosa's light swept across the far wall and stopped. There was something embedded in the concrete. A rectangular outline, faint but deliberate. Rosa stepped closer and brushed her hand over it. "Hello. Help me move this," she said. They cleared away the debris until a small metal door came into view. Hidden behind plaster and paint, it was sealed with bolts. On its surface, etched faintly by hand, were 5 words. "Truth waits for the brave." Sophia stared at it. "What is this?" Rosa's breath shook. "It's what he died protecting." They pried the bolts loose, one by one. The door creaked open, revealing a small compartment filled with sealed envelopes, a cassette tape, and a stack of photographs wrapped in twine. Rosa's hands trembled as she lifted the top photo. It was Daniel, standing beside a group of men outside a government building. One of the men was Leon Vargas. Another was someone Rosa didn't recognize, until she turned the photo over. A name was scrawled in Daniel's handwriting. Deputy Director Harris. Sophia frowned. "Who's that?" Rosa's voice was barely audible. "The man who led the investigation into your father's disappearance." Sophia's eyes widened. "You mean?" Rosa nodded slowly. "He was part of it. They covered their own tracks." She picked up the cassette tape next. Across the label, Daniel had written a date, August 14th, 1999, and a single word, confession. Sophia found an old player on the shelf, its battery corroded but functional. She inserted the tape and pressed play. Static crackled, followed by Daniel's voice, older, strained, and scared. "If you're hearing this, I'm already gone. They told me it was about protecting families, but it was never that. It was about control, about silencing the ones who saw too much. I took their files, but they found out. They said they'd come for Rosa next. So I made a deal, one that might save her but not me. I put the evidence in her name so they'd stop looking. If she ever finds this, forgive me." Rosa covered her mouth, tears falling silently. Sophia sat frozen, her father's voice echoing in the dark. "I'm going to Crescent Bay tonight. If I can hand this to the press, maybe it ends here. But if not, someone has to finish what I couldn't. Tell her I love her. Tell Sophia the truth doesn't die when the body does." The tape clicked off. Neither spoke for a long time. Only the faint hum of the sea outside filled the silence. Then Sophia said quietly, "He didn't abandon us. He was running for us." Rosa nodded, her voice breaking. "All this time, I thought he chose to leave. But he chose to save us instead." She gathered the envelopes, tucking them into the tin box. "This can't stay here," she said. "We need to bring it to someone who'll listen." Sophia's gaze drifted to the window, where headlights flashed briefly across the driveway. Her expression shifted. "Mom," she whispered, "someone's here." Rosa turned, the color draining from her face. Through the dusty glass, the silhouette of a man stood by the gate. A cigarette ember flared in the dark. "Vargas." Sophia reached for her mother's hand. "He followed us." Rosa's eyes hardened. "Then it's time he learns this house doesn't belong to him." Thunder rolled over the hills, shaking the windows. The lights flickered once, and went out completely. In the darkness, the sound of footsteps began to approach the porch. Low, steady, certain. The first knock wasn't loud, just a slow, deliberate tap that sent a shiver crawling up Rosa's spine. Sophia froze mid-step, clutching the tin box against her chest. Outside, thunder growled, and rain swept across the windows like trembling hands. The house, once Daniel's refuge, now felt like the heart of a storm that refused to die. Rosa moved to the front door, every movement careful, steady. "Stay behind me," she whispered. Sophia nodded, her pulse echoing in her ears. A second knock came, harder this time. Then Vargas's voice, smooth and confident. "Mrs. Alvarez, you've been busy." Rosa said nothing. You know, your son was a brilliant man, he continued, his voice muffled through the door. Too brilliant for his own good. He believed in truth, in justice, noble words, until he realized what justice costs. Rosa's eyes flickered toward the staircase. She motioned for Sophia to move toward the back hall. Go, she mouthed. Sophia shook her head. I'm not leaving you. The door handle turned. Vargas sighed theatrically. You always were stubborn, Rosa. Fine. We'll talk face to face. A crash of glass. The side window shattered. Rain and shards scattered across the floor as Vargas climbed through. His coat dark with water, his gun drawn. Sophia gasped, stepping back. Vargas smiled coldly. There's no need for that look. I'm not here to hurt you. I just need what's in that box. Rosa stood between him and Sophia, unflinching. You'll have to take it from me. He tilted his head. I intend to. Rosa's gaze hardened. Daniel warned me about men like you. Men who destroy everything they can't control. Vargas chuckled softly. Your son wasn't a saint, Rosa. He thought he could outsmart us. He stole our data, threatened exposure, then realized he was in too deep. We gave him a chance to disappear. He took it. Sophia's voice trembled. You're lying. He died because of you. Vargas stepped closer, the light glinting off his gun. He died because he couldn't choose. He gave me part of the files to buy your safety and kept the rest. His mistake was trusting you'd never look for them. Rosa's throat tightened. He didn't trust you. He trusted the truth. Vargas sighed. Truth doesn't feed families. Power does. And the people I work for. They still have plenty of it. He extended a hand. The box, Rosa. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Sophia's voice broke through the tension. You said he gave you part of the files. Then you have his confession. Vargas hesitated. Yes. Sophia's eyes narrowed. Then play it. He frowned. What? Play it, she said louder, fire in her voice now. Let's hear my father's voice. Let's hear what you claim, he said. For the first time, Vargas seemed uncertain. Rain pounded against the broken window. Rosa's eyes gleamed in the flickering candlelight. Go ahead, she said. Play it. Or are you afraid of what it will say? Vargas exhaled sharply, pulling a small recorder from his pocket. Fine. He pressed play. Static. Then Daniel's voice, faint but clear. If you're hearing this, it means I failed. They promised to keep my family safe, but I know how they work. I gave them what they wanted. Not the real files, only shadows of them. The truth stays where they'll never look, in the hands of the ones they fear most. Rosa's eyes widened. Rosa, you were right. Some truths aren't meant to be hidden. If Vargas finds this, tell him he's standing on borrowed time. The real evidence is already moving, and when it reaches the light, he'll finally see what justice feels like. The recording ended with a soft click. The room fell silent. Vargas's face paled. No, he couldn't have. Sophia stepped forward, fury breaking through her fear. You built your life on lies, and he knew it. He left you chasing ghosts while the truth waited here. Vargas's composure cracked. He raised the gun, his voice shaking. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Rosa moved calmly, placing herself between him and Sophia. Her voice was soft but unyielding. I do. I've been living with it for 25 years. Vargas hesitated, the smallest flicker of doubt, and in that breath, Rosa reached for the old floor lamp beside her and swung. The gun fired, deafening, the bullet shattering the mirror behind them. Sophia screamed. Vargas stumbled, the lamp connecting with his wrist, sending the gun skidding across the floor. Rosa kicked it away. Vargas lunged, grabbing her arm, but Sophia was faster. She snatched the tin box, clutching it to her chest. You're done, she shouted. The files are already backed up. Vargas froze. What? She glared at him. You think we came here unprepared? My father's USB. It's already uploaded to the press. It wasn't true, not yet, but the conviction in her voice made Vargas falter. Rosa stepped forward, eyes blazing. Leave. Before the truth does what I won't. He looked between them, fury and fear battling behind his eyes. Then he took a step back, breathing hard. This isn't over. Rosa's voice was low. It is for you. He turned and stormed out into the rain. His car engine roaring seconds later. Headlights vanished into the storm. The silence that followed felt endless. Sophia dropped the box onto the table, her hands shaking. Rosa steadied her. You did well, she whispered. Sophia looked at her mother, tears glimmering. He was right. Dad was right. Truth always finds a way. Rosa nodded slowly. But it needs someone brave enough to carry it. Lightning flashed, illuminating the family portrait still hanging crooked on the wall. Daniel's smile seemed almost alive in the light. Proud, forgiving. Rosa turned toward it, her voice trembling. It's over, Daniel. You can rest now. But as she said the words, Sophia's laptop pinged. A soft, unexpected sound that made them both freeze. Rosa frowned. What was that? Sophia hurried to it, opening the lid. The screen flickered, then displayed a single new file, one that hadn't been there before. It was labeled, "For Sophia, from Dad." Sophia's hands shook as she opened it. Lines of text appeared, then a video thumbnail. Daniel, older, sitting in what looked like the lighthouse basement. He was thinner, his eyes hollow but alive. He spoke directly to the camera. "Sophia, if you're seeing this, it means the truth made it home. But there's one more thing you need to know. What I found, what I fought against, wasn't just about corruption. It was about bloodlines. About how they built their power through family ties." He leaned forward, voice trembling. Rosa didn't just marry into their system. She was born into it. Sophia's breath caught. "What?" Rosa went completely still. Daniel continued, tears brimming in his eyes. "She didn't know. They used her name long before we met. Her father helped build the very organization I tried to destroy. I thought I could protect her by hiding it, by running. I was wrong. Only you can end it now, Sophia." The video froze. Sophia turned slowly toward her mother. "Mom, is it true?" Rosa couldn't speak. The storm outside raged harder, wind shrieking through the cracks in the old house. Her lips parted but no sound came. The truth had finally spoken, and it was louder than any storm. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, growing closer. Inside, the screen still glowed, Daniel's frozen face watching them both. Sophia whispered, her voice breaking. "What else did he hide from us?" Rosa's eyes glistened as she finally met her daughter's gaze. "More than you're ready to know." Lightning flashed once more, and the power went out, plunging them into darkness. The morning came quietly, as if afraid to disturb the truth that had finally spoken. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered in the hush between waves. Rosa stood by the window, wrapped in her faded shawl, the one Daniel once bought her from a market by the sea. The house smelled of salt and rain, alive again somehow after years of holding its breath. Sophia sat at the table, the letter spread open before her. The ink had run in the rain, but the words were still legible. Daniel's handwriting, looping and uneven, full of apologies and love he never found the courage to say aloud. Between the lines, she could almost hear his voice. Rosa didn't speak. She simply watched the young woman who had his eyes. Not just the color, but the same flicker of restlessness, the same ache that comes from searching for something you can't name. Sophia looked up. "He was trying to come home, wasn't he?" Rosa's breath caught. "Yes," she whispered. "He just never made it." The truth had taken 25 years to find its way back. The letter had explained everything. Daniel's desperate attempt to fix what he'd broken, the offshore job that went wrong, the friend who betrayed him. His final act had been to send the key, to a place only his mother would understand. Sophia traced the edges of the rusted key with her thumb. "He said it would open the room where everything started." Rosa smiled faintly. "Then we should go there." They drove in silence through the narrow road to Crescent Bay, the world washed in gray and silver. The lighthouse stood at the edge of the cliff, a lonely sentinel, its white paint chipped, its windows clouded by years of sea spray. Rosa hadn't been there since the day Daniel left. Inside, the air smelled of dust and old memories. Each step echoed like a heartbeat. They climbed the spiral staircase, and at the top, a small door waited, one that Rosa had once locked herself. Sophia handed her the key. For a moment Rosa hesitated. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of all that had been lost. She turned the key. The lock clicked, soft and final, like a sigh released after decades of silence. The door swung open to a small room bathed in light. Inside was a wooden chest, old but intact. Rosa knelt and lifted the lid. Inside were fragments of a life. A boy's drawing, a stack of unsent letters, a seashell from their last trip before Daniel vanished. At the very bottom, wrapped in cloth, was a photo of the three of them, before everything fell apart. Sophia sank beside her. "He kept this." Rosa nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "He never stopped being my son. He just got lost in the dark." Sophia reached out, her hand covering Rosa's. "Then maybe it's time we bring him home." Outside, the sea glimmered under a clearing sky. Rosa stood at the balcony, holding the photo against her chest. For years she had begged heaven for closure, for a sign that forgiveness could still bloom in barren soil. Now, beside his daughter, the echo of his better self, she felt that answer quietly unfold. "Do you think he'd be proud of me?" Sophia asked, her voice small. Rosa looked at her, the strength in her posture, the grief softening into grace. "He would be proud that you came back," she said. "And so am I." The gulls cried overhead, circling the lighthouse like keepers of memory. Rosa placed the key on the ledge and let the wind take it. It spun once in the air, glinting against the sunlight, before disappearing into the sea. The sound of the waves filled the silence that followed, not as sorrow but as song. For the first time in 25 years the house, and her heart, exhaled. Rosa and Sophia walked back down the steps, their hands brushing, 2 generations finally bound not by loss, but by what was left behind. As they stepped out into the light, Rosa turned one last time toward the sea. "Goodbye, my son," she whispered. "You can rest now." And somewhere between wind and water, it felt like he answered. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. Your voice matters.